All right, parents, here we go again. It's the Ask Dr. Tony episode. This is the Experience Miracles podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, an expert in pediatrics, neurodevelopmental disorders, and drug-free, nervous system-focused healthcare. On this weekly episode, I'll be addressing the top questions on every parent's mind. If there's one thing we love and welcome, it's parents who never stop learning, asking the hard questions, and advocating for your kiddos like none other. So get ready for some real talk, real-life clinical and parenting experience, and real easy to understand answers that will help your family take action and get to that next level of health and healing. You ask, I answer. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode, as we are now calling this, of the Ask Dr. Tony show. Now let's have some fun right out of the gates. When I hear my name or see my name inside on, I don't know, or hear it, on these episodes or on social media. Oh man, you guys are just wonderful. A lot of times, let me just let you in on an internal joke, funny / not funny, sort of thing in my real life these days. We awesomely get to crank all this content out for you guys. And I hope that when you hear or see my name, it comes with the message of the feeling of hope, answers, and drug-free help. I hope that's what you get when you associate my name in your life. It's just empowerment and education and informed choice and inspiration and all the good things, because I think we're all this way, or I don't know, but I am. And when so often the content team, we have our incredible team, Dr. Morgan and Chris and Jaleesa and John, and, so many amazing people just working every day behind the scenes so that we can bring this message of hope, answers, and drug-free help to you, whether you're jamming with us here on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and you can see me. It's fall, so rocking the jacket over top of the Expect Miracles shirt, or you're listening later on the podcast. What I got to tell you is, so often, well, not that often, they're very kind to me. They will be like, hey, can you dig through this piece of content and let us know if you like it? Can you listen to this one and pull some clips out of it? Which means, everyone, I have to listen to myself talk or watch it on video as well. And you all are just wonderful people for continuing to put up with me. And I just think the world of you for that. And then also I think, what are you, crazy? Like you love talking about dysautonomia, vagus nerve dysfunction, subluxation, the absolute utter failures of the conventional medical system and the conventional pediatrician. And then evidently a few of you are even sending in messages like you love the rants, you love the farmer stories, and the, I'd like to call it occasional, but it's probably quite occasional, dad joke and random story that's snuck in. So, hey, you guys are getting value and impact for your family and kids out of this. So I promise you this, we will continue to do this. And I'll give you another promise at the start of this episode here. We are also working as hard. We've got 3 amazing things. It's all one thing, bringing this work to the world. But 2 days a week, I get to serve patients in the clinic, our practice, PwC Chiropractic outside of Chicagoland. 2 days a week, I get to teach other chiropractors, and 1 day a week, well, actually it's about 1.5 and 1.5 on these last 2, and it's split equally, getting this message out to you guys, writing articles, doing Instagram, Facebook, Experience Miracles podcast, YouTube stuff, and then very actively each and every week getting out and reaching more pediatric chiropractors, or I guess so often they start as, in a great way, standard chiropractors, and then getting them trained and getting them ready to serve your family. So getting them on the directory. So I just want you to know, if you are listening from a place where we do not yet have a local, all in and fully trained, it doesn't just matter that it's in their heart and soul. That is the most important thing. But it matters that we train them how to do this work clinically with excellence. Please know we're working on that. My London and UK homies, my South Africa family, what's up, my friends? Just anywhere and everywhere. Even over here in the States, we got plenty of regions and states and cities and counties and towns where we don't have a PX doc yet. I just need you to hear me on the kickoff of this one. We are working hard at it. And if you know a local chiropractor in your community, or you know of, even if you don't know them yet, and you're like, man, I need this work. I need this kind of neurologically focused chiropractic care for my kiddos and family. Moms, no one moves mountains like you. Moms and dads, you guys make it happen. And so go out to them, connect with them, walk into their office, have an in-person, my brain wants to say confrontation, but it would be a loving conversation about this, and then plug them in to this podcast, this Instagram, again, wherever you're watching this one and tuning in. Get them connected to us and let them know that we do have the most advanced training. And in fact, today we're going to talk about neurological soft signs. We're going to talk about the question that so many of you guys have been sending in. We've started care and we're not seeing change yet. We've started care and things are maybe a little bit worse. We've started care and my child is nonverbal with autism and I just can't wait. And I totally get the weight of this emotion, different version of the word weight. And it bears heavy on your family and you just can't wait to communicate and conversate with your kiddo. You can't wait to get them to finally get through their seizures so they can get off those nasty medications. I know that the big stuff is what you want to see get better first and fast. Goodness gracious, us too, my friends. That's why this conversation about some of my favorite stuff to teach, we're in the weeds with this one. This is one of the Ask Dr. Tony episodes. So it's not necessarily a big, broad, 30,000 foot view introductory topic. This is for those of you that have already really been digging into this work and especially are already under care. Now, that said, even if you're not yet, this is going to be a very valuable episode for you to listen all the way through because this is how healing actually happens. If we don't break it down to its brass tacks here, and if we don't put it into phases or stages and sequence it, as you'll learn all about, and really emphasize how important these two foundational signs of a child very much healing in the direction, on the road to big brain-based stuff, well, it might hold you back from getting started. Because when you get online, which is something we will always encourage. That's how we find you, serve you, and help you first for so many. But there is a lot of mixed information out there. And what is so hard to find, right, when you're communicating with other parents or other providers, and especially if you're kind of making your way through the comment stream on Facebook groups, which, by the way, you often see me and our team in there, right, trying to serve and connect and send articles and podcast links so people can learn and get information as well. But what's so often missing is context. And I want to start there. And this is not even in my article that I'm wrote today about neurological soft signs, and we're going to use as the outline for this episode. But the truth is every kiddo heals differently. And that's what's so awesome about being in practice with patients. When I get to work with patients one-on-one, I work with patients one-on-one. It's my favorite part of any job I have is the personalization and the customization. If you've been a patient family in our practice or a PX Docs practice that is like us, you know that there is a vast difference between customized, personalized care that you get from someone like a pediatric chiropractor and then the standardized one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach that you get from conventional medicine. I think one of the reasons it's really hard for us to understand as parents, and even for our own health, how real root cause, natural, neurological, drug-free healing happens is the only definition we have of healing is the medical definition, which says, we've started, it's happening, shouldn't it be happening? Now, we all are going to default to this definition and description of healing because that's all we've ever known, right? That is what medicine is really kind of sold and beat into us is like, take this pill and your headache goes away. Take this pill and your pain goes away. Take this pill and your ADHD and anxiety and depression and seizures go away. Doesn't always work so cleanly, but that is what they try and get across to us, right? There's not really a lag time between and I know if you're listening, instead of watching, you can't see my finger quotes here, but there's not really a lag time between the results. Truth is, those kind of results, symptomatic suppression only, aren't results at all, right? There's no actual healing. They're just covering up. And so I wanted to start there as kind of like chapter 1 of this episode to let you know that in order to really get into the thick of understanding how neurological healing, especially through this kind of chiropractic care works, we have to first start with a new definition of what results and healing really means. And that was hard for me. And then there's another layer there that I've already mentioned, and it can't get mentioned enough. We've got our head, and then we've got our heart, right? And the vagus nerve actually connects the two. I can't talk about things without saying the vagus nerve. I have like an internal shot clock where every 5 minutes I need to say vagus nerve or subluxation, and I just feel more at home in what I'm teaching because I'm about to go into some emotional construct again. And I am Dr. Tony, the pediatric science guy chiropractor, not Dr. Tony, you lay down on a couch and we talk about, I'm not trained in that, okay? So here's what I'm saying. It is so important that we understand how much our heart is at play with this. I distinctly remember watching Oliver have seizures and never, ever, 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 ever freaking wanting to see that again. I remember the visceral, emotional thought that I had and feeling that I had as a parent when Oliver struggled and with any of my kids' struggles. They've all gone through their own things as well and will again in the future. And I will want their struggles gone instantly. That's what my parent heart will absolutely want. So I don't mind at all that you guys, and that's not even the right way to say it. I love that you keep asking these questions of us. I love that you keep asking your PX docs these questions. And I think you should continue to do it. It's a little bit actually inside, if I go insular into the chiropractic circles where our care is care. It's not treatment. It's not a cure. We don't focus directly, primarily, and it's not even like in the top 3, and you'll hear that with neurological soft signs and scans. We don't focus the positive or negative benefit of our care based upon symptom alleviation only. That, again, would make us medicine if we did. So this real thread of conversation I'm having to kick this one off, it's actually a bit, I don't know what the right word is, blasphemous or controversial inside what are called principled chiropractic circles. I'm not supposed to talk about conditions or symptoms or seizures or meltdowns or things at all, because those symptoms, we've kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater in chiropractic. And you may be like, what does this have to do with parents? It's what you're going to get differently with PX docs. We love walking the tightrope with you. We are absolutely comfortable, and our docs are trained to have the conversation that is in your heart and then be able to take that one, honor it, empathize with it, fully understand that it's going to stay in play and should, because that's how you're going to get your kids better. You're going to keep fighting. Your heart's going to lead your way, even when your brain tries to, and others with almost a big brain and no hearts, take away, your hope. Well, that's what's going to hang on to it. But we also do need to get nerdy. We also do need to get sciencey. And that's what you'll get from this podcast, this platform, and our docs as well, is that stuff matters. But we also have to look at this scientifically. We also absolutely need to look at this in a neuroplasticity, neuroscience model. And when we can understand it, that's kind of my story here, contrasting between head to heart. When we can understand it scientifically, logically, cognitively as well, well, I think that's going to help put our hearts at ease when healing takes longer than we want. Because I'll leave you with that on this introduction, and then we'll get into the neurological soft signs and the sequencing and steps of healing. It often, most often, especially with big stuff, autism, seizures, pandas, POTS, anxiety, ADHD, these things that for the majority of you are reaching out to us for help with, they take the longest to get better. And so they're the hardest to stay through these early stages of healing, when on the surface, when we look at the big brain-based stuff only, there's still no words. We still have seizures. We still have meltdowns and behavior issues. If we look at the big stuff only, we kind of miss the forest through the trees. And what I want to do with this episode is really go slow, go methodical, and go detailed into what the neurological soft signs are, because it was essential for my own career to understand, hey, we are absolutely, positively, with clinical, physiological, neurological proof on the right road to healing. And that's what these neurological soft signs and our inside scans, we're going to link these two things up, will give us, okay? So, per usual, that was my introduction, okay? Every time the team is like, what do you think there, buddy man? You think you can knock out a podcast episode in 30 to 35 minutes? I just lovingly say back to my team, what do y'all think? And they're like, we just thought we'd ask again this week just in case. And then I think, well, what if I do a 30-minute introduction and then a 30-minute episode. Does that count as a 30-minute episode? I'm going to make it count. I feel better. See, back to my feelings. There we are. Thanks for going along with that, everybody. I can feel you nodding right now. Okay. So what the heck are neurological soft signs? So as I wrote it in my article, which is right in front of my screen here, I'm going to just read it because I can write much more clearly and succinctly than I can say out loud. Okay. So hence the rants. So what neurological soft signs are: subtle yet absolutely critical indicators that show a child's nervous system is beginning to recover even before the more obvious changes in things like behavior, speech and communication, seizures, and those things occur. So it's absolutely understandable, as we just got done going through big time, that we're looking for as parents. Believe me, as providers, we want it happening instantly too. Our hearts are involved in our care too. We very much are trained to lean into the science and lean into our heads and our clinical protocols. Extra time, because if you get stuck in your heart, sometimes you try too hard, too fast, and you actually get in the way of healing. And that's actually part of this conversation too. I did that in my early stages. So, but before those major breakthroughs of speech and reduced seizures, it's really important to be able to recognize these neurological soft signs of healing and know that they mean this: there is foundational shifts, changes, and improvements happening within your child's, and I'm going to call it this way, bodily, basics, physiological function. And this is such a cool lesson when we learn about neurological soft signs. And when someone reaches out, and it happens all day, every day. And again, keep reaching out to us and keep talking to your docs in person about this. When we get a message and it says, hey, we're 12 visits, we're 4 weeks into care, we're 2 weeks into care, we're 2 months into care, and we haven't seen any changes yet, what I know that question really means is we're still having seizures. My child is still nonverbal. And also when people reach out and say, oh man, the seizures might be getting worse, the behavior's different, we're having different kind of meltdowns now, things are, and you can look at these symptomatically. And again, back to our original definition of what's good, what's not, what's results and what's not. And absolutely understandably, we look at that and we go, things are worse, not better. And generally these are coming in, on paperwork. If it's our patients, no, we're talking to them in person, but coming in through, comments and Instagram DMs. And I almost always know that if I had the ability to lean in individually with that patient and their neurological soft signs and their insight scans, which I'm going to get even more granular as to what those are, we would be able to see all sorts of positive changes, which are moving in the absolute right direction to give us confidence, clinical clarity and confidence that the big stuff is coming. Even if it hasn't changed at all yet, we call that a still stuck, or is detoxing and getting a little worse. And that's why we've got to look at this thing in totality. And in the early stages, this is one of the most important kind of synopsis statements of this episode. In the early foundational stages, which for tough cases is months and months, not days and weeks, it's months and months. In the early foundational stages of healing neurologically, we have to put almost all of the focus on the insight scans and our tableside checks. Those are what we call functional objective measurements of improvement. And then these neurological soft signs, which I like to categorize as the middleman or the early foundational basic yet crazy important signs of getting to the brain and getting brain-based healing. So what are the main neurological soft signs? In some ways, I can split these into 5. Others, I can go into 10. We're actually going to put it into 6 different neurological soft sign boxes for you to track changes with your child. And I want you to know that number 5 and number 6 are going to start to literally neuroanatomically and neurofunctionally make our way into the brain, where challenges with autism, epilepsy, and anxiety and ADHD hang out. But know this is the whole, I can't wait to get all the way through this episode, because ADHD and autism, in fact, it's one of our best performing reels, because providers and parents are both like, dang, that's so true. A few medical people are like, but hey, they're conventional medical people. So they still think that autism, ADHD, and seizures are brain-based problems only. And that's not true, and it's not even close to true. The brain and the body are vastly, intricately interconnected. And the brain, for the most part, is simply running on autopilot. Our autonomic and central nervous system, 99% of their function is on reaction and automatic function only. It's reading what's happening inside the body, and it's reading what's happening outside the body through our senses. And that sensory information is coming into the brain and telling the brain what is and what isn't. So if the brain is malfunctioning, if the brain is having problems, we absolutely positively cannot just look at the brain first and treat the brain with drugs, surgeries, or even kind of some people similar to me with lasers and neurointegrative exercises and wobble boards and spinning machines. We cannot just treat the brain directly first while skipping the foundations. And so these 4, 5, 6 things, they are very foundational. It's actually too limiting than it should be in a vacuum to call them basics and call them foundation. And it's I don't even like to limit and talk about the body separate from the brain. But for this conversation, it's an effective way to look at it because it'll help you see the contrast points of where change needs to happen first within the basics, within the foundations, within the body, and within what we've now categorized as these neurological soft signs and early signs of healing and recovery. Those absolutely need to happen first on the road and on the path to getting the brain better. So number 1, better posture, muscle or motor tone, and gait. So movement. So what we do, if you've been under care at all, you know that I laugh at this because we are, to say, like here on a video podcast sort of stuff, it's hard for me to do any of this. Maybe one day we will. We'll make some short form videos where maybe I can do a little talk over, a little voiceover and start to point out in video form what I would do. I was about to say do. And that's funny because very soon I'm going to talk about poop, which do. Okay, no, I'm a pediatric chiropractor. Poop jokes just come out easy. Okay, back on. So this neuromuscular coordination, efficiency, and function can be tracked via posture, movement patterns, and gait. And so when we actually begin evaluating our patients, especially our neurodevelopmental kids, which is the majority of my patient load, we begin evaluating the function of their nervous system with our eyes. And what that means is we're looking for distortions within their head tilt, their shoulders, their hips, their gait. We're looking for these disruptions and technically by term, it's called dyskinesia and dyspraxia. These are different ways that gets into more the fine motor with speech. Dystonia would be a dramatic example of what I'm talking about here. They have hypertonicity and are hypertonic. That would look like, to be more of the obvious examples, this would look like things like toe walking and stimming for hypertonicity. This would look like grinding their teeth and their jaw, chewing on things and having to touch things or squeeze their hands or wring their hands. So again, kind of categorized as a stimming. We look for that as a sign of increased subluxation, sympathetic dominance, hypertonicity. But there's another side to this motor, muscle, tone, posture, gait, coordination conversation. And that is where things are too weak, too lax, too hypotonic. Now, most families we see have taken their kids awesomely into PT, OT, and movement-based therapists. So they're pretty familiar with this stuff. But I want to laser in this part of conversation, right in this first most important soft sign. And the reason it's most important is because motor function, I've done a bunch of episodes about this. Motor function, proprioception, gross motor milestones, and fine motor, sensory motor function. It's the most influential input into the brain. The motor system, if we start to separate these into silos, which the way function works, none of them are separate. They're all integrated. But for this conversation, let's separate. It's very valuable to do so. The motor system, how your child moves through life against gravity, is more important by a large margin than their gut health. Now, do not fry me at the steak, nutrition, microbiome mafia, okay? Don't do that. I didn't say the gut and the microbiome aren't essential. I'm not going to say that MTHFR and toxic load and the adrenals and the kidneys and the liver aren't essential and that we don't have a toxic burden on our kids. But look at their body first. The way they move through life is a mess. Every single case I see of severe autism challenges, their motor system is a mess. They have severe hypertonicity and they have severe hypotonicity. Now, I want you to laser in on where in the body. It's really easy, and this is what PTs and OTs and even pediatricians often can't miss this, which is, saying something. But you can see their tension in their feet and their jaw and their hands, and you can see them stimming there. You can easily see their collapsed or their kind of bloated core, and you can see that they have a weak core. Look at the spine. Look at the neurospinal system. No one, and I literally mean this, no one in healthcare evaluates the neurospinal system. No one trains their eyes and their movement, motor, tone, coordination, gait analysis first on the brainstem, the neck, the thoracics, and the neurospinal system, which is wild, y'all, because that's the hub. Every single muscle in the body is connected to the spine and the central nervous system and the neurospinal system. I don't even like to call it the spine. I like to call it the neurospinal system. That is the main conduit and corridor that controls every other muscle. Before you can move your pinky toe, a muscle and a nerve is actually what's really coordinating this within the neurospinal central canal has to function and respond first. That is for an output and an input. So you're like, dang, this guy is going deep talking about posture. Is it that important? Whether my kid sits up tall, too much or too little, has a collapsed core? Is it that important that my kid runs and is constantly proprioceptively seeking? It is the most important thing on this list, which is why we put it first, okay? So what would a neurological soft sign look like for us pediatric chiropractors trained to look for this stuff first? And let me say it one more time. When I say first, holy heck do I mean first? Not just before seizures and speaking, before even sleep and digestion and other changes. We can literally see pre and post adjustment changes. You'll see this if you're under care. We actually look at these neuromotor tones, imbalances, distortions to find subluxation, because that's exactly what subluxation is. It's distortion and disruption in the neuromuscular function and proprioceptive function. And so we make adjustments to improve it, calm it, regulate it, balance it, and then we check it while you're still there. And we can point out, look at those shoulders more relaxed. Look at that head tilt no longer there, and now they're midline. Look at the improved efficiency of their coordination. And it's these little, subtle neuromotor distortions and disruptions that when they get better, and this is the very first thing that will happen with neurologically focused chiropractic care. And as a parent, it's going to be really hard to see at first. So we do our very best to train our chiropractors to not only see this for their clinical value, because they've got to own this stuff, to adjust what's called primary subluxations, but we train them to point it out and communicate it to you. So when I look at it on my article here and it says better posture, muscle tone, motor coordination, and gait, that's a very simple way. We really open up the hood to that stuff, and you will never, ever. And I have the greatest respect, and we collaborate with pediatric PT, OT, speech therapists, fine motor, gross motor, boss people all day, every day. When we train them to see what our eyes see, they go, whoa, I've never looked that closely at the brainstem, at the cervicals, at the neck, at the shoulders, at the spine. That's where the storm begins. That's where birth trauma, breech position, and even toxins. You want to know where the most open blood-brain barrier in the entire body is, where toxins could get into the brain and wreak havoc? It's the upper neck. It's the brainstem area. It is the most permeable area ever. So that is why toxins, whether ingested, injected, or inhaled, they can absolutely get into the nervous system, not just through the gut, but they can get in through CSF and through neurospinal areas as well, if they are subluxated, distorted, and dysfunctional. So big conversation right there about that beast all by itself. Number 2, neurological soft sign, improved sleep patterns. This is cause for celebration. The majority of our neurosensory, neurospectrum, perfect storm kiddos don't sleep. They don't do well falling asleep. They don't stay asleep. And when they are asleep, they're not restful. they are moving. They would technically qualify for restless leg syndrome, which I remember when I was in chiropractic school, when we first started to, lovingly make fun of drug commercials. The restless leg drugs were just slinging at the time. This is pre-Ozempic days, which is the number one thing they market now because, they already sold all the head cold shots. Anyways, I digress. Not digress, that's just true. And so anyways, sleep. When your child can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, and even when they are asleep, and we always tap into parents' instincts with this. None of this is complex. And it's like, hey, are they actually relaxed? Does it look like even when they are technically asleep, like their body and their nervous system are calm? Do they wake up rested and regulated and connected in the morning? And for the majority of our perfect storm patients, sleep is a mess. So one of the earliest indicators of neurological recovery, because sleep is essential to exactly that. Neurological healing and neurodevelopment. Why are kids, infants, toddlers, young kids supposed to sleep so much? Even teens, they're still developing like crazy. In fact, it's absolutely, I was going to swear there for a second. It's just dumb that school starts so early. It's very unhealthy in terms of neurological function. And right now, I don't know that my teens listen to my podcast at all, but if they did listen to any part right now, they would be like, I love you, Father. Because I would vote on their team, not so they can sleep in. I'd probably get them up a little bit early and make them go do chores with me. But I very, very, very much in our family, for the health of our kids, we've not only made sure they get adjusted on the regular and we live very clean, healthy lives. There's no toxins going into our kids. They are not ingested. They are not inhaled. They are not injected. Like, we live a toxin-free life entirely, but we've always honored sleep and made sure that they're getting good sleep. Well, that is so important for health and promotion, but it's so important for healing and recovery. So when we see sleep get better in the early stages, party on Wayne, party on Garth. If you grew up in the 90s and 2000s with me, then you know that Wayne's World reference, and it is absolutely worthy of celebration. Neurological soft sign number 3, poop, there it is. Okay, we're staying in the 90s. We just went from a Wayne's World reference to a tag team reference. So you younger parents, hopefully you've been able to tap into this stuff, because the movies right now in your generation and the rap music no, we had it better. We literally, I don't know that tag team was necessarily like a legendary rap group per se, but they did have that one hit. Whoop, there it is, which in a pediatric chiropractic is sung, office is sung or rapped. Poop, there it is, okay? And then we do that on repeat. We literally have like a semi-delivered diapers to our practice every month, because when kids get adjusted and we tap into and stimulate their parasympathetic and vagus nerve, parasympathetic system is the rest, digest, it's the poop button. And just like I said earlier, that the majority of our spectrum, sensory, seizure, anxiety, autism kiddos have a motor system that's a mess, and sleep that is a mess. They have digestion that is a mess. Now, here's the kicker with this one. And this is where parents out there, you're going to listen to this and go, son of a gun, he's freaking right on it again. We have the majority of our patients with autism, with epilepsy, and with any condition in the neurological box whatsoever, and autoimmune conditions. All of our sick kids, asthma, allergies, because the gut and immune system are so connected, their gut's a mess. They do not poop regularly. They don't poop easily. And that includes copious amounts of probiotics and gut boosting, immune boosting supplements and vitamins and interventions. When I first got into practice, and this is a good change, what I'm about to kind of give you story form wise, very much relies or kind of connects to this one. Parents this used to break my heart. They used to attach an addendum to the paperwork of all the different medications that their kids were on. Now, we still get attachments. We still get PDF attachments in addition to our paperwork, because the boxes we have on our paperwork often aren't enough to have parents write down all the supplements, all the herbs, all the homeopathics, all the prebiotics, probiotics, prune juice. And a lot of times, the majority of those supplements are to try and improve gut and digestive and bowel function. And in the vast majority of cases, when you dig into the case history and then we run our scans and our exam, the real root cause of their constipation and gut issues is not nutritional, it's neurological. That doesn't, again, don't take this clip out and again, don't come out. I am the biggest fan of nutrition. The bestest homies of mine continue to come on this podcast, from Jessica and Well Rooted to Dr. Josh Axe and And his podcast, if you don't tune into his podcast, my goodness, it's amazing. They were just, as of recording this one and rocking this one this week, them, Dr. Josh, the food babe, so many other homies were out there just coming at it with Kellogg's and talking about toxins. Because of course, toxins can't go into the gut. And when they do, the gut's a mess. And of course, you've got to get good things like probiotics and macronutrients into it. But the nervous system has to be functioning full send in order to absorb the good macronutrients, the probiotics, and the good supplements and the magnesium that are going in. And then the nervous system needs to be in full function to get the bad stuff out for excretion and elimination and detoxification. All of that is the business of neurocoordination. And so when we get the nervous system healing, it's such a joyful time for parents to see their kid finally. And by the way, you want to know who really struggles with digestion? Are middle school, junior high, and teenagers with anxiety and depression. If you want to get your mental emotion, if you have a child whose mental emotional challenges are significant, we have got to get their digestion, and then for females, their cycle and their hormonal, which is really, again, it's about movement, right? And regeneration of that function. We have got to get those things going. And one of the most important neurosoft signs is improvements in digestion, motility, absorption, elimination, decreased bloating. I mean, you get all of this with chiropractic adjustments alone. It's really quite powerful and incredible to see the amount of improvement that chiropractic adjustments done in this neurologically focused way can have on gut function all by themselves is amazing. Number 4 on our list of neurological soft signs is improved. I put these two together. Again, I talked about earlier, I can kind of splice this out into 10 but I know me and I'm going to go deep into each one. So I line itemed these two suckers together. Improved respiratory and immune function. Ear, nose, throat, sinuses, RSV, croup, ear infections, chronic bronchitis, asthma, allergies. A lot of kiddos struggling with ADHD, anxiety, autism. They're chronically sick. Their respiratory, lymphatic, and immune functions are a mess. And that's a real big deal because if they're sick all the time, nobody who's sick all the time with their respiratory, immune, and digestive systems feels good emotionally. You don't. When you're sick, do you even go to work? When you're sick, do you try and focus and concentrate? When you're sick, are you not a huge, I always tell parents this is the context of how important it is for brain-based function to get the respiration and the immune function online first. You ever heard of the man cold? You ever seen how big of a big? Now, thankfully, I grew up on a farm, and so I was exposed to everything you could ever imagine. Actually, even freaking like chemicals like Roundup and whatnot. And right now you're like, all right, explain something. No, it doesn't. I'm sure I've detoxed, 20 some years later. And I grew up, I was a farm kid, so I was outside in the dirt always. We weren't a chiropractic family, but we also weren't a medical family. So I didn't take medications to disrupt the function of my immune system and get that thrown off. Much to the chagrin of the rest of my team, you can't get me sick. And now I have a pediatric practice. I literally put my hands on sick kids every single day. If there's anybody on planet Earth that could disprove the germ theory via just their human experience, it's me. Germs don't make us sick. Our inability to get over them, get through them, and get them out of the body. It's lowered resistance is what makes us sick. And the perfect storm and subluxation and everything we teach is why kids are so sick all the time. Then you throw all sorts of toxins on top of that. And no wonder there's chronic colds and congestion. So a neurological soft sign of your child getting better and being on the path to their brain-based stuff getting better is they not only experience fewer illnesses, but the real key, one neurological soft sign I want you guys to really be aware of, do they get over a cold faster? Do they clear congestion faster? The majority of our perfect storm kids are basically chronically constipated digestively and constipated with their lymphatics, their sinuses. They're just always sick. They got bags under their eyes. Their skin is so pasty and pale. They're always congested. They're always coughing. They're always mucousy. And they start to get adjusted and they get to the other side of all of that. And when you get that part of the body working better, now the brain has less stress, less things it needs to go through and deal with. And then number 5 and number 6 start to come online in the middle stages of care. Sometimes we have some awesome changes, and these changes are seen early as well. And again, it all depends on the definition of early. Each kid, this is this work with this podcast, I've said it a bunch of times on here, it's really freaking hard, you all, because I'm and responding to your DMs in the best of ways. Now, please keep them coming. Hear that. Ask the hard questions. God built us differently. We're ready. Like, let's go. But it's hard to give you individually via the podcast, YouTube, Instagram, the answer that you deserve because we don't know the deets of your kid's case, right? And so when it comes to timing, I can always give you these, and I don't even like to call, I don't ever feel like I'm giving generalized answers because we're definitely more in depth and more granular by a large margin than what everybody else's health advice is. Like if you go to Cleveland Clinic or you go to Mayo or you go to WebMD, you're like, wow, talk about non-riveting information, right? But this is getting into the details, but yet there's actually way more detailed in terms of being able to kind of sequence out and layer out some expectations for which things of these neurological soft signs are going to change for your child and when they're going to change. That is something that the individual nervous system focused chiropractors are going to be better at than us in general. So that's why we want you to keep having this conversation that this Ask Dr. Tony episode is doing with your docs in person as well. So number 5 and number 6 is where we start to enter the brain-based changes. Again, we've been talking about brain-based changes. You have to get the brain-body connection. You got to get rid of subluxation. You got to get the nervous system functioning better to have neuromuscular gait posture better. You've got to get the nervous system and the brain better to improve sleep. You've got to get the nervous system and the brain better to improve digestion and immune function. And you definitely need to start to get rid of subluxation, nervous system dysregulation. And the early signs of that it is working when you do is your kiddos will have less sensory overload. They'll experience less hypersensitivity to stimuli, lights, textures, new places, social interactions, brushing their teeth, wearing different clothes, trying new foods. And when they have less, 5 begets 6, when you have less sensory overload, because sensory overload is the cause of ADHD. Sensory overload is the cause of anxiety. Sensory overload is the cause of ODD and OCD and behavior and emotional issues. So once you get improved sensory function and a calmed, more regulated, less sensory overload, you start to see improvements in just flat, calmer, better behavior and emotional regulation kiddo. And what's nuts is God is always, always, always directing traffic for us. When I'm doing this one like fresh and raw as I always do. I definitely prep. I write my article. I do my outline. If you ever watch on YouTube, you'll see which is why my video guy's probably going to be ticked that I wore a hat because I just realized I looked down quite a bit because I have my notes on the screen right here. I have my notes. I'm not reading because I need you to. I don't want to miss anything. I want to help your family with every detail possible. But on my laptop over here, I'm not even kidding. 2 minutes to the T that I had scheduled to go live, do this, and then have it ready for the podcast. Our team just sent me this message right here. We have a Slack channel and it's called Wins. And what it says, I got to go to the right one here. Sorry, bear with me on this. I won't read the name, but blank, this little dude who has now been under care for just 4 days. So he's an intensive patient. So he's had 6 adjustments because we do 2 per day. And so this is Thursday morning as of rocking this one. So he's coming in for his 4th day in our office. He's visiting us from Ireland with this incredible family for a month of care with an intensive. And he's so stuck into this absolute fight or flight, sympathetic sensory overload. He never sleeps. His motor tone and system is full of tension. It's absolutely like you can see his muscles. They almost look painful. He has so much motor tension. When we first did our examination and our first adjustments on Monday, he does not fall asleep. He does not stay asleep. He is wickedly constipated despite 3 pages of supplements. He is sick all the time. He picks up every cold and basically always has a cold. And then the first 3 days in our office, we actually, thank goodness for this beautiful fall weather, we adjusted him outside a bunch of times. We did reports. You'll never meet a team as adaptable, as loving, and as caring, and as easygoing, and as, hey, little man, little girl, whatever you need to be comfortable, we'll do it. There's no forcing anything in our office. And today, the team just sent me this message and said he came in to the office smiling, no meltdowns, no crying, and is just playing and interacting with everyone in the office. I know I'm just verbally reporting that to you, but if your kid has had any meltdown, and especially if your kiddo is a level 3, stuck in sensory overload, autism kiddo, you can actually see that much change with intensive protocols. Now I shouldn't have even given you the numbers, because does that mean every kid, very similar to this kid, on their 4th day, 7th adjustment, we get the breakthrough of the sensory social system? Not every kid. Some it's 2 and some it's 20 and some it's 40. It's always a different number, but that's not what I want to drive home with this episode today. It always happens in the same sequence. We've got to get their neuromotor system better first. We've got to get their sleep improving. We've got to get their digestion, their immune function, and their respiration improving. And we've got to get rid of sensory overload and that sensory overwhelm to get access to the brain. So the reason that my team sent in all caps, our front desk rockstar Jen sent this out today to everyone. Our wins channel is our most favorite channel. And that the wins channel didn't say he's talking today. It's a nonverbal kiddo for now. It will one day say, and I'm more confident now today that one day on our wins channel, it will say this kiddo is talking and this kiddo is interacting and this kiddo is in school living his best life. I know that one day our wins channel will say that. I knew that when I got started because his case history, his scans, I had everything I needed to be confident in his results. But now that we're seeing these neurological soft signs, and guess what? It's the last 3 nights in a row, he slept through the night. He never does that. I promise when I dig in a little bit later, when I go to see them, he probably is pooping. And that is why, because he's now sleeping, his neuromotor system is less stressed and his digestion is less problem. Well, that all, if it was still there, feeds the sensory overload. So the body, the basics, the foundation need to get better first before the brain does. And I thought it was I know it's the most God-directed thing ever that real life story happened this week today. As my schedule, if anybody knows me, I live by a weekly schedule. I am married into organization, y'all. And I got quite a few, I don't call them jobs. I don't have a job. I technically, by other people's definition, I have multiple jobs, but I love every single freaking one of them. And it's all really one thing, getting this work to the world. So I love what I do. You can maximize my schedule. And I still plenty of time with rocking the farm life and family life and being dad. But anyways, I live and breathe by my schedule. So I knew exactly what time I was going to rock this episode. And right before that is that message. So God, we're paying attention, and we know that not only the science, but these real life stories that are super relatable to you and your family, we will never stop sharing both. I promise you, on this page, wherever you're watching this, or on the podcast, if you're listening to this in that way, I promise you, we will never stop sharing copious, endless, relentless amounts of both. We will share the case studies, the testimonials, and the real life stories of neurological healing, whether we're talking about the soft signs, like him sleeping, pooping, and not melting down today, or then the big stuff that's going to come later on. And, those big things, we'll share those stories repeatedly so that you can have that hope, so that you can have that relatability, because it isn't easy. And it isn't overnight. Neurological healing goes in sequences and it goes in stages, and we need to see these neurological soft signs get better first before we get to the brain. And in addition, and I'm going to be super brief with this, nobody believes me on the podcast when I say that, but I am. The other thing that rides along tracking these basic soft sign bodily changes is what we call our insight scans. And again, so if you've been under care or are under care already with a nervous system focused PX doctor, you know that we don't rely just on our eyes and our hands and then changes within physiological functions and those changes within the conditions. We really, really, really rely on the insight scans. Those are so visual. It's really hard to bring them into a conversation like this on this platform. So if you don't know about the insight scans yet, I want you to go to the website. We will always drop the links are on our bio if you're jamming there, or it'll be in the show notes if you're taking this one in that way. But the truth is, the insight scans are so neurological. They measure neurological dysfunction, subluxation, dysregulation, and then we run them. So like on an intensive program, we run them every 3 days, and on a regular program, we run them weekly or every other week. And so we run these on regular intervals to track neurological progress healing, and recovery as well. So in summation, and to kind of recap this one, before we even expect in the early stages, and I got to say it one more time, the early stages can be months, many months, and dozens upon dozens of adjustments. And the early stages can, to the big stuff, look like nothing's happening. To the big stuff, can look like things are worse. I did one that's coming. I don't even, gosh, I make so much content these days. I don't know which one's already released or which one is in the hopper or the queue. Sorry, there you go, Canadians and Europeans. You guys call it the queue, so I wanted you to have that. And I don't know how to spell that though. It seems like a lot of vowels. Everybody in the rest of the world loves vowels. Like pediatrics, that's got an A in there in the front end of it. And I was just jamming. I got up this morning and I was got on a coaching and a mentoring call with our two. By the way, there's two amazing more than, but these two are leading the way. PX Docs in Australia, and those guys. And I was like, why? What's with your love of vowels? Just get there a little bit quicker. But anyways, okay. So that episode may already be released. I will take this. I wanted to really focus on neurological soft signs on this episode. There's another one I did about the 3 stages of care, where inside that, I really spoke about the detox, what's happening when things get worse. And if you need even more data on that, if you want me to do an entire episode just on the detox, I absolutely can. And I absolutely positively will. And as I say that out loud, I might have already. It might have happened last week, but I rock a lot of stuff. I write a lot of articles. I'm in practice. I do a lot of stuff. And I'm 43, so it's just, I'll take more fish oil there. That's what I'll do. Just kidding. I'll get an extra adjustment and get it tuned up. So just don't forget about the insight scans. And then as these neurological milestones, so that's the final thing I want to teach on this. Think of it as milestones, not milestones that are on a poster in a pediatrician office, milestones of true neurological healing and recovery. We are working on this literally as a poster that'll be in on our website and on our socials. And then once we have it, it'll be inside PX Docs offices. As long as your kiddo's insight scans, actually, let me go in order. The pre and post adjustment changes. This is where your doctors get granular. When the changes are happening on the table, in the office, on the room, not every kid gets on the table, so that doesn't quite qualify, okay? So we adjusted this other little dude out in his car the other day, and guess what? It worked. And now he came in and is laying on the table today. That's freaking healing happening, y'all. And so those changes, first, we track those literally day to day, adjustment to adjustment. Second, we track the insight scans. Those are the second most important clinical criteria to make sure we're moving in the right direction. Third, neurological soft signs. And fourth and last, the big stuff. Now, when I say it in that order, again, if you were to take that statement in a vacuum, does that mean that the big stuff, the seizures, the nonverbal, does that mean that we don't care about that? Goodness gracious, absolutely positively not. Our hearts are involved in this healing process as well. We want that so badly for your family, but we would be misleading you, we would be misguiding you, and we would be throwing you off track and off course if we even pretended to say that that stuff generally happens quick, fast, and overnight. For some kids, certain components of their neurological dysfunction, by the time we got a hold of them, by the time they started to get adjusted, by this certain, and it, again, this is the tricky one. I probably shouldn't say this here, but I'll do a whole episode. There's a principle in chiropractic called limitations of matter. And all that means is every kid gets their own algorithm, which I said in the beginning, the middle, and this one. And we do that with each and every case. And certain kiddos that have a certain genetic condition or of a certain age, or their stress got certain amounts of depth and dysfunction into their system, we're going to put forth projections and prognosis and timelines and these healing milestones and markers. We're going to put them forth individually, differently for each of your individual different kids. So I hope you'll always give me grace on this platform, on the podcast, and on our videos, and myself and our team, if we respond to you in written form or the article, that we're doing our very best to get granular with you through this amazing relationship we are so blessed to have with you. I just don't want you to ever stop asking the questions. I just want you to really continue to ask the tough questions to your PX doctor locally as well, because they have the details on your kiddo. And I'll leave you with this. They have the ability, we have a clinical forum within our PX clinical training. All of our docs are trained differently, and they keep training. They have to stay in a training curriculum to stay on the directory. Nobody gets there just because, hey, I know Tony. Yeah, I love you, buddy, but get your crap together. We got kids to save here, okay? And we got to be at the highest level. Like, I promise you this, I will be a better pediatric chiropractor next month than I am this month. Our team will be with the best team in the world, better team next month than this month. Your kids count and matter so much to us. We are relentless. We stay so humble and we learn every single day and we dig in more every single day. And so we train our docs into this clinical understanding, but we also really train them in having these hard conversations and answering these questions. It is the hardest part of our job. This right here, explaining how healing happens. We could do that actually pretty well. When, W-H-E-N, is it going to happen? Hardest question, and it's not even close for us to answer. But there is science behind it. There is sequencing behind it. There's neurological soft science before big brain changes in it. And so trust it. That's my true final message to you today, everyone. Please trust the process. It does not happen overnight. And in the biggest of stuff, it happens quite slowly, but it also happens sequentially. You'll see changes physically, literally, as adjustments happen with your kiddo. You'll see changes on their scans. You'll see changes and improvements in the neurological foundational soft signs. And when you see some of that, all of that, a mixtape of that, get excited because your process proves off. And that's why this is so different than any other kind of healing, because our promise is not overnight. It's anything but. Our promise is there's a whole care plan behind this. There's a whole process behind this. There's a partnership behind this, us with you and your other providers, right? There's a lot of those influences that are coming in. Lifestyle, other therapies, other treatments. Often we need to actually pause and stop some because they're overwhelming a kiddo. And often maybe there's one missing and we need to add it in and layer it in over time. That's part of the art behind all this as well. And it goes into the sequencing conversation. So with that, this is not the last time you will hear this conversation from me. Hopefully it's not even the first time. At least I've definitely alluded to this and got into this with some other episodes. But this is a singular episode about the sequence, the stages of healing, what it means when you've started and are seeing no changes, what it means when you've started and are seeing a little bit of worse changes. I'll go deeper into detox on another one, but what the neurological soft signs are. This conversation in and of itself, those 4, 5, 6 signs we went through, and I went detailed into them. So not only look for them as a whole, but look for little tiny important changes within each of those boxes. And when you see those changes, celebrate, smile. Speaking of respiration and neurological function and sensory stress overload, you can start to lighten your stress. You can start to take deeper breaths. You can start to feel more confident, convicted, and excited that your kiddo is truly on a healing path when you start to see these changes happen. Everybody, I love you so much for tuning into this. If you're listening to this on the podcast later on or wherever you are, please share the heck out of this platform. However you're soaking this one up, send it out. Like it, share it, comment, obsessively, relentlessly add comments to it. Tell the algorithm this is the message that needs to get out to so many more parents. Text it to them, Slack it to them, Instagram story, link it up to them. However you need to get this message out, we ask that you do. That's the number one request we have for this. Everywhere in the world, there's a kid in a family struggling, looking for these answers, looking for these explanations, looking for this care to get their kiddo out of the storm. And the absolute catalyst to doing that is you just sending this, you just sharing this, you just commenting on this. It all adds up. I see it all day, every day. Our ability to see and experience miracles all over the world is directed first by God above, calling us to this work and keeping us healthy and building us a team and a plan to do this. And then the old algorithm, baby, let that thing go. We need your help doing it. We always are immensely, ridiculously grateful when you do. So God bless to you, each and every single one of you. Keep tuning in. Keep sending us your questions, especially for this one, the Ask Dr. Tony show. That's how it goes. And I'll keep going through them in granular, maybe a little over the top detail per usual. God bless. Be well. See you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Do you have a question that you would like to submit? Either send it to support@ pxdocs.com with the subject Ask Dr. Tony, or head on over to our socials at pxdocs, where you can submit your question in our stories every single week. Every kid counts and every family counts, so let's leave no questions left unanswered. If you loved this episode and you want to help us reach more kids, we would so appreciate if you left a review and a rating on your favorite platform. God bless. Be well. We'll see you on the next one.